Adam Sandler, the name that erupts like thunder across comedy's landscape. The man who didn't just make us laugh, but carved himself into the very DNA of American humor with a ferocity that transformed juvenile jokes into generational anthems. With his man-child persona and that unmistakable voice that could shift from whisper to scream in a heartbeat, he became more than a comedian. He became the court jester of our collective childhood. The voice that taught us it was okay to be ridiculous in a world that demanded seriousness. From the moment he sang about lunch ladies on Saturday Night Live to when he made us believe in the power of love through The Wedding Singer, Adam Sandler didn't just perform comedy. He seared it into our souls with such raw authenticity that we forgot comedy could be anything else. He ignited the screen in Happy Gilmore, turning a failed hockey player's rage into box office gold, earning $41.2 million against a $12 million budget, and forever changing how Hollywood viewed silly as bankable. Over 60 films, $5.1 billion in worldwide box office receipts, selling out Madison Square Garden for stand-up specials, a $420 million Netflix deal. The numbers only scratch the surface of a legacy built on making the world forget its pain through laughter. But behind the goofy voices that made millions howl with joy, behind the infantile characters that became cultural cornerstones, lived a man silently drowning in sorrows that would have destroyed someone without his peculiar brand of armor. Few ever saw the boy whose father's illness cast shadows over every laugh. The young comic who watched his closest friend die before either of them had truly lived. The father discovering his own children were targets of the same cruelty he'd spent decades trying to comedy away. The husband watching his family suffer for his fame while he smiled through red carpets. Behind those mischievous eyes that promised another punchline lay nights of crippling anxiety, health scares that never made tabloids, and wounds that even the loudest laughter could never quite silence. What transformed the king of comedy into a man who admitted he sometimes cries in his car between takes? How did the figure who epitomized eternal youth on screen spend decades hiding panic attacks, therapy sessions, and the exhausting reality of depression from an audience that expected him to be their happiness dealer? What you're about to witness is not a tale of Hollywood hilarity. It's a raw, haunting journey through trauma, sacrifice, and the crushing weight of being everyone's clown, while privately forgetting how to smile without a camera present. This is the story of how Adam Sandler turned childhood pain into punchlines, grief into gags, and somehow kept believing in tomorrow, even when laughter became the loneliest sound in the world. If Adam Sandler ever made you laugh until you cried, if his movies ever gave you comfort on your worst days, leave a like below. Your small gesture is a tribute to the man who gave us permission to be silly while carrying burdens we never imagined. There's a scar on Adam Sandler's psyche that no amount of laughter can heal. The memory of watching his father Stanley collapse from a heart attack when Adam was just 7 years old. An image that would haunt every joke he'd ever tell. Long before the world would know him as comedy's biggest star, he was just a terrified boy in Manchester, New Hampshire, learning that love and loss were inseparable companions. Adam was born on September 9th, 1966, in Brooklyn, New York, but his family moved to Manchester when he was 6, seeking the promise of a quieter life. His father, Stanley Sandler, worked as an electrical engineer, spending long days installing systems in buildings while battling health problems he hid from his children. His mother, Judith, was a nursery school teacher who carried the family's emotional weight with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. The day that changed everything came in 1973. Stanley's heart attack happened at the dinner table. One moment he was laughing at something Adam had said. The next he was gripping his chest, his face turning gray. 7-year-old Adam watched paramedics carry his father out on a stretcher, convinced he'd somehow caused it by making him laugh too hard. "I thought I killed him with a joke," Adam would confess decades later, his voice still carrying that child's guilt. "For years, I was afraid to be too funny around him." Stanley survived, but he was never the same. Weakened, fragile, taking 20 pills a day, a ghost of the robust father Adam had known. The family dynamic shifted overnight. Adam, the youngest of 4 children, became the designated distraction, the one who could make Daddy smile without taxing his damaged heart. His siblings, Scott, Elizabeth, and Valerie, handled the practical fears, but Adam handled the emotional ones, developing his comedy as medicine for a household that had learned to whisper around mortality. Comedy wasn't a choice, he reflected years later. It was survival. If I could make my family laugh, maybe we could forget for 5 minutes that Dad might not wake up tomorrow. School offered no refuge. Adam was the class clown, but not by choice. His ADHD made sitting still impossible. His anxiety manifested in constant fidgeting and outbursts that teachers labeled as disruption. He was diagnosed with a learning disability that made reading feel like decoding a foreign language. While other kids played sports, Adam performed impressions in the bathroom mirror, practicing voices that would later make him millions, but at the time just made him weird. "I always felt like I was watching life from outside the window," he once admitted. "Never quite fitting in, never quite understanding why everyone else seemed to know the rules, and I didn't." His mother, sensing his struggles, enrolled him in acting classes at the local YMCA, hoping structure might help. But structure was the enemy to a mind that moved like Adam's, chaotic, explosive, brilliant, but uncontrolled. That childhood trauma never truly disappeared. It only learned to hide beneath punchlines, beneath silly voices, beneath characters who were all variations of a boy trying to make his sick father smile without killing him. The boy who feared his own power to bring joy would become the man who weaponized laughter. But first, he had to survive the loneliness. At 17, Adam Sandler stood on the stage of a Boston comedy club, his hands shaking so violently he could barely hold the microphone, staring at an audience that looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. His first stand-up performance in 1984 lasted exactly 4 minutes before he ran off stage mid-joke, vomiting in the alley behind the club from pure terror. The owner banned him from returning, calling him the worst comic I've seen in 20 years of this business. Adam sat in his beat-up Honda Civic afterward, seriously considering driving it off the Tobin Bridge. There was no plan B, he would later admit, the words carrying the weight of someone who'd stared into the abyss. Either I became a comedian or I became nothing. Those early years at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, where he'd enrolled in 1988, were exercises in humiliation. Adam performed at any club that would have him, the comic strip, catch a rising star, the Improv, usually getting the 2 a.m. slot when the audience was too drunk to listen or too tired to laugh. He made $25 a night when he was lucky, nothing when he bombed, which was often. His material was scattered, desperate, a manic mixture of songs, voices, and observations that rarely landed. One particularly brutal night at Caroline's, he performed to an audience of 3 people, 2 of whom left during his set. The third was asleep. Living in a roach-infested apartment on the Lower East Side with 3 roommates, Adam survived on peanut butter sandwiches and stolen cafeteria food from New York University. His father's medical bills had drained the family finances, so Adam worked as a street performer in Washington Square Park between classes, juggling and doing impressions for spare change. "I was invisible," he recalled. "Not just unknown, invisible. Like I was performing in a different dimension from everyone else." The rejection was constant and cruel. Club owners told him he was too Jewish, too weird, too angry underneath the silly. His classmates at NYU were finding success, getting agents, booking commercials, landing theater roles. Adam couldn't even get a call back for a hemorrhoid cream commercial. One casting director told him bluntly, "You have a face for radio and a voice for silent films. Find another career." He kept a notebook of every rejection, every harsh critique, every failed audition. By 1988, it filled 3 volumes. His roommate found him one night sitting in their bathtub fully clothed, the notebook in his hands, seriously considering burning it along with his dreams. But fate operates on its own timeline. Dennis Miller saw Adam perform at the Improv in 1989, a set where Adam had finally stopped trying to be what he thought comedy should be and just became himself, angry, silly, vulnerable, and strange. Miller mentioned him to Lorne Michaels, who was looking for fresh voices for Saturday Night Live. The audition came in 1990. Adam was so broke he had to borrow a suit that was 2 sizes too big. He performed his lunch lady character, the one that had bombed in clubs for 2 years. Then came the call that changed everything. He was hired as a writer for SNL, not a performer, but it was enough. Resurrection from invisibility had begun. The role that would launch Adam Sandler from SNL writer to breakout star wasn't supposed to exist. Opera Man, the character that exploded across Saturday Night Live in 1991, was born from a rejected sketch about a delusional street performer that producers deemed too weird for television. Adam was competing against Chris Farley's physical comedy, Phil Hartman's precision, and Dana Carvey's impressions, established stars who commanded the show while Adam sat in the writer's room crafting jokes for others to perform. But when a musical guest canceled last minute, leaving a 5-minute hole in the show, Adam grabbed his chance. He had exactly 3 hours to convince Lorne Michaels to let him perform the character everyone had rejected. Behind the scenes, Adam was destroying himself with preparation. He practiced Opera Man in bathroom stalls, subway platforms, and empty hallways at 30 Rock until security guards knew him as the crazy singing guy. He developed severe acid reflux from the constant voice strain, vomiting blood between rehearsals, but hiding it from producers. The anxiety was crushing. He'd lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks, surviving on Pepto-Bismol and terror. "I was drowning in my own opportunity," he later confessed. "Every time I put on that cape, I thought this would be the performance that got me fired." Chris Rock, his closest friend at SNL, later revealed, "Adam would shake so bad before going on that I'd have to physically push him onto the stage." The physical preparation bordered on self-destruction. Adam studied actual opera recordings for 18 hours a day, destroying his vocal cords attempting to hit notes his throat wasn't built for. He tore ligaments in his neck from the exaggerated head movements, wearing a neck brace between tapings that he'd hide under hoodies. The costume, that ridiculous cape and tuxedo, had to be specially weighted because his trembling hands would make the fabric shake on camera. Between takes, he'd disappear to the bathroom, not for rest, but to scream into towels, convinced that if he could exhaust his anxiety, it couldn't sabotage him live. When Opera Man finally aired on November 9th, 1991, even Adam's most optimistic prayers couldn't have predicted the explosion. The studio audience erupted in laughter that lasted so long they had to edit it down for broadcast. Phone lines at NBC lit up with viewers demanding more. Within a week, Opera Man became water cooler conversation across America, the sketch replayed on news programs, quoted in offices, imitated in schools. David Spade called it the moment Adam went from writer to star, while the New York Times declared, "A new comic voice has arrived, and it's singing off-key on purpose." Suddenly, Adam Sandler wasn't just a name in small credits. He was the guy America was talking about. But even at this pinnacle moment, darkness crept in. The success felt disconnected, undeserved, like it belonged to Opera Man, not Adam Sandler. "I had everything I dreamed of," Adam reflected years later, except the ability to believe it was really mine. The acid reflux became chronic, requiring daily medication. The anxiety evolved into full-blown panic attacks. He'd achieved the impossible, transformation from invisible writer to breakout star. But the boy who'd watched his father's heart fail still believed that too much success, like too much laughter, could kill everything he loved. By 1999, Adam Sandler wasn't just a comedy star. He was a box office deity, commanding $20 million per film, while his production company, Happy Madison, printed money faster than theaters could count it. That year alone saw Big Daddy demolish expectations, earning $235 million worldwide against a $34 million budget, making it the seventh highest-grossing film of 1999. His net worth had exploded to $140 million. With a real estate portfolio spanning from Manhattan penthouses to Malibu compounds, he worked with titans Drew Barrymore, Steve Buscemi, Christopher Walken, Winona Ryder, A-listers who now lined up to appear in his seemingly juvenile comedies. The weird kid from Manchester who'd bombed at comedy clubs was now Hollywood's most reliable money machine, with his films generating over $2 billion globally by the decade's end. But even at the height of this impossible success, Adam was waging a silent war with crippling anxiety that manifested in increasingly disturbing ways. During the filming of Little Nicky in 2000, where he played Satan's son, something inside him shattered. The panic attacks became so severe he'd hyperventilate between takes, requiring an oxygen tank hidden behind the director's chair. His hands would go numb without warning, forcing him to improvise scenes where his character kept his hands in his pockets. The craft services table noticed he'd stopped eating solid food, surviving on protein shakes because anxiety had made swallowing feel like choking. "I had everything except the ability to breathe normally," he would later reveal in a moment of startling vulnerability. "I was suffocating on success." The public saw triumph after triumph. The Waterboy, $190 million worldwide. The Wedding Singer, critical acclaim and $123 million. Happy Gilmore, becoming a cultural phenomenon. But privately, Adam was medicating himself into oblivion just to function. Xanax before every public appearance, Ambien to sleep, beta blockers to control the physical symptoms that cameras might catch. He'd arrive on sets at 4 a.m., not for preparation, but for private therapy sessions with counselors who signed ironclad NDAs. His personal physician traveled with him, monitoring vitals that spiked dangerously during even comedy scenes. The insurance policies on his films contained secret clauses about anxiety-related production delays. Working with contemporaries like Jim Carrey, Mike Myers, and Ben Stiller, Adam became known as the most professional comedian in Hollywood. Never late, never complained, never showed weakness. What they didn't know was that he'd often lock himself in his trailer between scenes, lying in complete darkness practicing breathing exercises to prevent full-blown panic. Rob Schneider later revealed, Adam would be killing it on camera, then immediately run to the bathroom to have what we now know were panic attacks. We thought he just had a weak stomach. "Success is a monster that eats you from the inside," Adam once told a trusted friend during this period. "Everyone sees the feast, but you're the meal." By 2001, at the absolute peak of his powers, Adam Sandler had his own production company, a development deal with Sony worth $125 million, and the power to greenlight any project he wanted. But he also had a secret that would soon explode. His body and mind were failing him in ways that all the box office success in the world couldn't fix. But even at the height of everything, the shadows were growing longer. Adam's first serious relationship with actress Margaret Rudin in 1992 had begun with the desperate intensity of two struggling performers who thought shared ambition could substitute for compatibility. She was 24, waiting tables while auditioning for bit parts, and he was 26, newly famous from SNL, but still convinced it would all disappear tomorrow. Within 6 months, they were living together in a cramped West Village apartment, where the bathroom door didn't close and dreams felt bigger than the walls. "I thought I'd found my anchor," Adam would later reflect with visible regret. "But we were both drowning at different speeds." The relationship crumbled in 1993, when Adam's rising fame created a canyon between them. Margaret wanted a partner who came home. Adam was becoming someone who belonged to everyone else first. The pattern continued with actress Alicia Silverstone, whom he dated briefly in 1996 after meeting on a studio lot. She was Hollywood royalty after Clueless. He was the guy making fart jokes for millions. The relationship lasted 4 months before she ended it, reportedly telling friends that dating Adam was like being with two different people, the public clown and the private depressive. The rejection stung deeper than Adam ever admitted publicly. "She saw through the act," he confessed to a friend years later, "and what she found underneath scared her away." Then came Jackie Titone in 1999. The woman who would redefine everything Adam thought he knew about love and survival. They met on the set of Big Daddy, where she had a minor role as a waitress. Jackie was everything his previous relationships weren't. She understood the industry without being consumed by it, saw through his persona without running from what lay beneath. They married on June 22, 2003. In a lavish $2 million ceremony in Malibu, with 400 guests including Jennifer Aniston, Rob Schneider, and Drew Barrymore. Their daughter Sadie was born in 2006, followed by Sonny in 2008. From the outside, they were Hollywood's most stable comedy couple. Two people who'd found lasting love in an industry that devoured marriages like appetizers. But behind closed doors, they were navigating struggles the public never glimpsed. Jackie essentially became a single parent during Adam's endless production schedules. He'd be gone for 4 months filming in Africa, return for 2 weeks, then disappear to promote in Asia. The children knew their father more from movie screens than breakfast tables. Love in Hollywood means accepting that your husband belongs more to Netflix than to you, Jackie once confided to a friend during a particularly lonely stretch. The real test came with Adam's increasingly severe anxiety, which made him difficult to live with, even when he was home. He'd wake up at 3 a.m. and panic, convinced something terrible was about to happen to the girls. He installed a $400,000 security system, hired bodyguards for school runs, and once canceled a family vacation because he dreamed about a plane crash. Jackie became his emotional regulator, talking him down from anxiety spirals, managing his medications, learning to recognize the signs of an approaching panic attack before he did. "I thought I'd found my home," Adam said in a rare vulnerable moment. "But sometimes I wondered if I was just Jackie's third child, someone else she had to take care of." Yet through every separation, every panic attack, every missed birthday, they chose each other, not perfectly, but persistently. In February 2017, Adam Sandler collapsed on the set of The Week Of in Long Island, clutching his chest while his left arm went numb, convinced he was dying exactly as his father almost had 44 years earlier. The diagnosis came after 6 hours of tests at Mount Sinai Hospital. Severe cardiac arrhythmia brought on by chronic stress, caffeine abuse, and a genetic predisposition that had been lurking in his DNA like a patient assassin. His heart had been beating irregularly for years, but Adam had dismissed the fluttering as anxiety, the chest pain as acid reflux, the shortness of breath as being out of shape. "I thought I was invincible because I made people laugh," he later admitted. "Turns out my heart didn't find me that funny." The exact moment of realization had come during a scene with Chris Rock when Adam's heart rate suddenly spiked to 180 beats per minute while sitting still. His vision tunneled, sweat poured down his face despite the February cold, and his hands went completely numb. Rock later recalled, "Adam grabbed his chest and said, 'I think I'm dying,' so calmly that I thought it was a bit. Then he hit the ground." The paramedics found his blood pressure at 190/110, stroke territory. The cardiologist's face went pale, reviewing his EKG. "You've been walking around with a bomb in your chest," she told him. "I'm amazed you haven't had a major cardiac event already." The physical symptoms had been building for years, hidden behind comedy and cleverness. The heart palpitations during stand-up shows that he'd blame on adrenaline. The dizzy spells during filming that he'd attribute to dehydration. The crushing chest pain at night that he'd treat with antacids. Between takes on Murder Mystery, he'd have to sit down every 10 minutes telling everyone he was method-acting exhaustion. Jennifer Aniston later revealed, "Adam would go gray in the face and claim it was makeup. We all knew something was wrong, but he was too proud to admit it." Jackie became his medical enforcer, monitoring every meal, hiding his coffee, counting his pills to ensure compliance. Adam was fitted with a heart monitor that transmitted data to his cardiologist in real time. He underwent cardiac ablation surgery in March 2017, a procedure where they burned away the misfiring electrical pathways in his heart. "I thought about dying every single moment," Adam confessed in a rare moment of transparency. "Not wanting to die, but calculating the odds. Would I see Sadie graduate? Would I walk Sonny down the aisle? Would I die on camera and become a YouTube clip?" Recovery wasn't just physical, it was existential. Adam's daily routine became a medical regimen: beta blockers, blood thinners, ACE inhibitors, a Mediterranean diet that eliminated everything he loved, cardiac rehabilitation 3 times a week, where he walked on treadmills next to octogenarians. The permanent effects were undeniable. He couldn't perform high-energy comedy anymore without risking arrhythmia, couldn't drink alcohol, couldn't even get genuinely angry without his monitor alerting his doctor. "Comedy used to be my medicine," he said. "Now medicine is my comedy. I take so many pills I rattle when I walk." The man who'd built an empire on manic energy now had to ration his heartbeats like a careful accountant. The call came at 4:15 a.m. on September 9, 2003, Adam's 37th birthday, while he was in Toronto filming 50 First Dates. His brother Scott's voice was barely recognizable through the sobbing. Their father Stanley was gone. The man whose failing heart had defined Adam's entire childhood, whose every laugh Adam monitored for signs of strain, had died peacefully in his sleep at age 68. The irony was crushing. After 30 years of fearing his father would die from laughter, Stanley had simply stopped breathing while dreaming. "I spent my whole life preparing for this call," Adam would later say, his voice hollow. "But when it came, I realized I'd prepared for nothing. You can't rehearse grief." Adam had seen Stanley just 2 weeks earlier at a family dinner in Manchester. His father had seemed stronger than he'd been in years, joking about Adam's movies, proud of his grandson's growing fame. They'd watched old home videos together, Stanley pointing out moments Adam had forgotten. Birthdays, Little League games where Adam struck out, but Stanley cheered anyway. The day Adam left for NYU when Stanley had cried behind his sunglasses. "He told me he was proud of me," Adam recalled, the memory cutting deeper than any criticism ever could. First time he'd ever said those exact words. "I should have known something was ending." The funeral was private, just family and a few of Stanley's co-workers from his engineering days. Adam delivered the eulogy, but halfway through his voice cracked completely. He stood at the podium, unable to speak, while his sisters finished reading his words. Stanley Sandler taught me that laughter could be medicine, the eulogy read, but he also taught me that some pain is too deep for punchlines. The image of his father's casket being lowered into the ground while Adam threw dirt on top became a recurring nightmare. He'd wake up convinced he could hear Stanley calling for help from underground, that they'd buried him alive, that Adam could save him if he just dug fast enough. What the public never knew was how Stanley's death shattered Adam's entire identity. Comedy had always been about keeping his father alive, making him smile without killing him. Now that Stanley was gone, every joke felt empty, every laugh hollow. I didn't know who I was supposed to be funny for anymore, Adam confessed to Jackie during one of many sleepless nights. My whole career was a conversation with my dad, and now he wasn't listening. The guilt was overwhelming. All those months on movie sets when he could have been in Manchester. All those Father's Days celebrated over phone calls from different continents. The aftermath was brutal. Adam developed severe survivor's guilt, convinced he'd inherited his father's bad heart as cosmic punishment for outliving him. He became obsessed with his own mortality, checking his pulse constantly, writing letters to Sadie for future birthdays in case he died young. He threw himself into work. The longest yard, click, reign over me, using characters to escape the son who'd failed to keep his father alive with laughter. But at night, when the camera stopped, he'd sit in his car listening to voicemails Stanley had left, messages about nothing important that now meant everything. His father's death changed him fundamentally. The man who played man-children suddenly felt ancient, carrying his father's ghost in every performance. By 2012, Adam Sandler sat atop a fortune worth $300 million, owned properties worth $85 million across Los Angeles, New York, and Florida, and had just signed a development deal with Sony Pictures worth $150 million. But what the world didn't know was that Happy Madison Productions was bleeding money at a catastrophic rate, funding vanity projects for friends that were destroying his reputation and bank accounts simultaneously. Between 2011 and 2014, the company produced 8 consecutive critical and commercial disasters. Jack and Jill lost $42 million despite studio propaganda claiming profit. That's My Boy earned just $57 million against a $70 million budget, and Blended became his lowest grossing wide release ever, pulling in $46 million domestically while costing $45 million to produce before marketing. The critics were savage beyond anything Adam had experienced. Jack and Jill swept the Razzies, winning every single category, a humiliation so complete that even Adam's defenders went silent. Forbes named him Hollywood's most overpaid actor 3 consecutive years. The Hollywood Reporter ran a devastating expose titled "The Death of Adam Sandler's Career" that detailed how his films had lost Sony an estimated $280 million. Theater chains began threatening to skip his releases entirely. I went from being a guarantee to being a gamble nobody wanted to take, Adam admitted in a private moment. Studios that had begged for my involvement were suddenly too busy to return calls. Behind the scenes, the financial hemorrhaging was staggering. Happy Madison's overhead was $30 million annually just to keep friends employed. Adam was personally funding Rob Schneider's mortgage, David Spade's production company, and keeping dozens of comedy writers on payroll for scripts that would never be produced. He sold his $13 million Manhattan penthouse at a $3 million loss. His Bel Air compound went on the market for $23 million, but sat unsold for 2 years before he accepted $18 million. The Ferrari collection was quietly auctioned. The private jet was returned. I lost $120 million trying to keep everyone else afloat, he would later confess. I thought loyalty meant paying for friendship, but I was just buying their silence about my failures. The public humiliation reached its nadir when leaked Sony emails from the 2014 hack revealed executives calling his films formulaic and an embarrassment, while discussing ways to end their relationship without triggering his pay-or-play clause. Amy Pascal, Sony's chief, wrote that Adam was driving the studio into the ground with garbage. Former collaborators distanced themselves surgically. Drew Barrymore politely declined 3 consecutive projects. Jennifer Aniston stopped returning personal texts. Steve Buscemi, who'd appeared in dozens of Adam's films, suddenly became unavailable indefinitely. "Success has 1,000 fathers," Adam observed with bitter clarity. "Failure is an orphan even when you've made everyone else rich." The survival tactics were desperate and humiliating. Adam took a Netflix deal in 2014 that industry insiders mocked as direct-to-streaming surrender. 4 films for $250 million that traditional studios had rejected. He accepted supporting roles in other people's films, no longer the star, but furniture. He performed at corporate events and bar mitzvahs for fees he once would have found insulting. Slowly, painfully, he began rebuilding, not the empire, but something smaller, more sustainable. Rock bottom isn't loud, he reflected. By 2022, Adam Sandler's appearance at the Film Independent Spirit Awards became a viral sensation for all the wrong reasons. His gaunt frame, trembling hands, and confused rambling during his acceptance speech sparked widespread speculation about dementia, Parkinson's, and terminal illness. What the public didn't know was that Adam had been battling severe sleep apnea for 3 years, a condition that was slowly destroying his brain's ability to function. He would stop breathing up to 60 times per hour during sleep, his oxygen levels dropping so low that doctors warned of permanent cognitive damage. "I was dying every night and waking up a little less myself each morning," he admitted to a close friend. "Some days I couldn't remember my daughter's middle names." The recovery from emergency septoplasty surgery in 2023 left him with chronic sinus infections and a voice that sounded perpetually congested, ending his ability to perform certain classic characters. During the filming of You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah, his own daughter, Sunny, had to feed him lines through an earpiece because he couldn't retain dialogue longer than 2 sentences. The crew pretended not to notice when Adam would forget where he was mid-scene, staring blankly at cameras like he'd never seen them before. "I felt like my brain was wrapped in cotton," he confessed during a moment of clarity. "The jokes were still there, but I couldn't find them." Public mockery followed his every appearance. His 2023 Mark Twain Prize acceptance speech, where he broke down crying multiple times and forgot to thank his wife, became a meme labeled Adam Sandler's mental breakdown. Social media campaigns with hashtags like #Save Adam and #Sandler senility trended for weeks. Comments sections filled with amateur diagnoses and cruel speculation about how long he had left. The man who'd made millions laugh was reduced to a punchline about mortality. He stopped reading reviews entirely after finding a Reddit thread titled, "Watching Adam Sandler Die in Real Time," with 45,000 upvotes. The isolation became suffocating. Adam withdrew from his comedy friends, convinced they were only staying close to watch his decline. He skipped his own movie premieres, sending pre-recorded messages that took 17 takes to get through without confusion. David Spade later revealed, "Adam called me one night and asked if I was his friend, or just someone waiting for him to die, so they could tell stories about him. It broke my heart, because I didn't know how to convince him otherwise." The panic attacks returned with vengeance, now accompanied by dissociative episodes where Adam would forget he was famous, asking Jackie why strangers knew his name. Recent controversies only deepened the wounds. His $60 million payday for Netflix films during the actors' strike was called Betrayal of Working Actors. His daughter, Sonny's nepotism-fueled career was criticized as buying stardom for untalented children. An awkward interview where he appeared to fall asleep mid-question went viral as evidence of drug abuse. "I've become everything I used to mock," Adam confessed during a therapy session that Jackie secretly recorded for his doctors. "A washed-up celebrity who can't admit he's done. I'm still here, but I'm watching myself disappear in real time, and the scariest part is sometimes I don't even care." Today, at 58, Adam Sandler lives not as the comedy king who once ruled Hollywood's laughter, but as a man who has learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit the joke is over and still keep breathing anyway. From the terrified boy watching his father's heart fail to the icon who made the entire world forget their pain through laughter, his journey reminds us that our comedians carry the heaviest hearts, that those who give us joy often have none left for themselves, and that perhaps their greatest performance is simply showing up when the laughter stops. He rises each morning in his Pacific Palisades home, downsized from the mansion, practical now rather than pretentious, checking his heart rate before his phone, taking 17 pills before breakfast, using a CPAP machine that makes him look like Darth Vader, but keeps him alive through the night. His daily routine is a negotiation with mortality. 45 minutes of cardiac rehabilitation, medications lined up like soldiers, reading scripts with magnifying glasses because his vision deteriorates monthly. His net worth has stabilized around $420 million, comfortable but no longer astronomical. Recent Netflix films like Murder Mystery 2 and You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah earned solid streaming numbers, proving Adam Sandler can still deliver, just not miracles. What brings him joy now are the invisible victories that no camera captures. Basketball games with his daughters where he can't run, but still teaches them to shoot. Sunday dinners where Jackie doesn't count his sodium intake. FaceTime calls with old SNL friends who knew him before Opera Man. Recording silly songs on his phone that will never be released but make Sadie and Sonny laugh. He finds peace in his home studio, writing jokes he'll never perform, creating characters who will never see screens. The comedy isn't for the world anymore. It's for him, proof he still exists beyond the disease and decline. The universal message woven through Adam's story speaks to anyone who has used humor to hide pain, who has been everyone else's sunshine while living in their own storm, who has discovered that making others happy doesn't guarantee your own happiness. It just makes your sadness less visible. His journey tells us that our worth isn't measured in the laughter we generate, but in our willingness to keep going when we've forgotten how to smile. That our real legacy isn't the jokes we tell, but the courage we show when the punchline is our own mortality. To those watching who perform happiness while privately falling apart, the office clown hiding depression, the family comedian masking anxiety, the friend who deflects every serious moment with humor, Adam's story is your story too. You are not alone in feeling like you're acting in your own life, like your joy is a performance and your pain is the only thing that's real. Your struggle is valid, your exhaustion is earned, and your survival is heroic, even if it doesn't feel funny. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us which Adam Sandler moment made you laugh when you needed it most. Leave a like, not just for the comedy legend, but for the human being who showed us that sometimes the saddest people create the most joy. Subscribe to hear more stories of icons who remind us that behind every laugh track is someone trying to drown out their own tears. Thank you, Adam, for the silly voices that got us through dark nights, for showing us that growing up is optional, but growing old is mandatory, and for proving that sometimes the best comedy comes from the worst pain. Your story doesn't end with a punchline. It continues with every morning you choose to wake up, take your pills, and face another day.